Jake Morrison felt the cold metal floor beneath his feet as he walked into the giant white room. The ceiling was so high he could barely see it. Around him stood the most powerful beings in the galaxy, each one looking down at him like he was a bug they wanted to step on. The room was quiet except for the sound of his footsteps. Jake had been to many important meetings in his life, but nothing like this. He was the human ambassador to the Galactic Council, and today he knew they were going to decide the fate of his entire species. High Counselor Zethkar rose from his massive chair. The alien was 12 feet tall with green scales that looked like armor. His yellow eyes glowed as he stared down at Jake. When he spoke, his voice was like the sound of rocks grinding together. "Human," Zethkar said, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "Your species has caused nothing but trouble since you joined our council 3 years ago." Jake kept his face calm, but inside his heart was beating fast. He knew this was bad. The other human diplomats standing behind him were trying to look brave, but he could see the fear in their eyes. Counselor Vexnari floated forward. She was made of what looked like living crystal, and when she spoke, her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "You humans have broken 17 different peace agreements. You started 3 trade wars. You refused to follow our cultural rules." "We were trying to learn," Jake said, his voice steady. "Every species makes mistakes when they first join the galactic community." Zethkar laughed, and the sound made Jake's skin crawl. "Mistakes? You attacked a Carillion trade ship because you thought they were cheating you." "They were cheating us," Jake replied. "We had proof." "You solved the problem with violence instead of talking," Vexnari said, her crystal body flashing red with anger. "This is exactly why your species cannot be trusted." Jake looked around the room. There were representatives from 47 different alien species, and not one of them looked friendly. Some had tentacles, others had multiple eyes, and a few looked like walking plants. But they all had one thing in common. They all hated humans. "We have reached our decision," Zethkar announced. The room fell completely silent. "The human species will be removed from all space stations and colonies under Galactic Council control." Jake felt his stomach drop. "You're kicking us out?" "More than that," Vexnari said with what might have been a smile if crystals could smile. "We are sending you somewhere special, somewhere you can be exactly what you seem to want to be." A huge screen appeared in the air above them. On it was a picture of a planet that looked like a nightmare. The sky was green and full of angry clouds. The ground was covered in strange plants that seemed to move on their own. In the distance, Jake could see creatures that looked like nothing from Earth. "This is Kepler 442c, Zethkar said. "Your new home." Jake had heard of Kepler 442c. Every spacefaring species knew about it. It was what they called a Deathworld, a planet so dangerous that no known species could survive there for more than a few hours. "You can't be serious," Jake said, his voice cracking for the first time. "That planet will kill everyone." "Perhaps," Zethkar said. "But you humans seem to love fighting and struggling. This will give you all the fighting you could ever want." Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes, Jake's assistant, stepped up beside him. She was a small woman, but her voice was strong when she spoke. "This is murder. You're sentencing 50,000 innocent people to death. We are giving them exactly what they have been asking for," Vexnari replied. "Freedom from our rules. Freedom to do whatever they want. Freedom to prove how tough they think they are." Jake's mind was racing. He knew this was really about fear. The other alien species were afraid of humans. They were afraid because humans didn't back down from fights. They were afraid because humans found solutions that no one else thought of. They were afraid because in just 3 years, humans had changed things in ways that made the older species uncomfortable. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. 72 standard hours, Zethkar said. "All human colony ships will report to the coordinates we provide. You will then proceed to Kepler 442c and land on the surface." "Our colony ships weren't built to land on planets," Lisa said quickly. They're designed for space travel only. Zethkar's smile showed his sharp teeth. Then you will have to be creative. Jake understood now. The aliens didn't expect humans to even reach the planet's surface. The colony ships would crash and burn in the atmosphere, and that would be the end of the human problem. It was a death sentence disguised as exile. What about our families? Asked Dr. Robert Kim, another member of the human delegation. What about our children? They go with you, Vexnari said. All humans must leave. No exceptions. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry now wouldn't help anyone. If we survive this, what then? You won't survive, Zethkar said simply. But if by some miracle you do, you will never be allowed to return to galactic space. You will stay on Kepler 442c forever. The other aliens in the room made sounds that might have been laughter. Jake realized they thought this was funny. They were enjoying watching the humans get their death sentence. The decision is final, Zethkar announced. Guards will escort you to your transport. You have 72 hours to gather your people and report to the designated coordinates. As the alien guards moved forward, Jake turned to his team. Remember everything you see and hear, he whispered. This isn't over. The guards were tall, gray aliens with too many arms and eyes that glowed blue. They didn't touch the humans, but they made it clear that resistance was not an option. Jake and his team were marched out of the council chamber and through the long corridors of the space station. As they walked, Jake's mind was working on the problem. 50,000 humans on 5 colony ships, a planet that killed everything, that tried to live there, ships that weren't designed to land. It seemed impossible. But Jake had learned something in his 3 years as ambassador. Humans were good at doing impossible things. They had always been good at it. From the first time they climbed down from trees to when they built rockets to reach the stars, humans specialized in surviving things that should have killed them. The transport ship was small and cramped. As they lifted off from the station, Jake looked out the window at the massive alien structures floating in space. This had been humanity's first step into a larger universe. Now it might be their last. Sir, Lisa said quietly. What are we going to do? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that meant someone was about to make a very big mistake. We're going to do what humans do best, he said. We're going to survive. And then we're going to make them regret ever thinking they could get rid of us. The transport ship jumped to faster than light speed, carrying the news of humanity's exile back to the colony fleets. In 72 hours, 50,000 humans would begin the journey to a planet that was supposed to kill them all. The Galactic Council had no idea what they had just done. They thought they were solving a problem. Instead, they were about to create something the galaxy had never seen before. They were about to find out what happened when you tried to kill humans by giving them a challenge. Captain Ryan Tucker had commanded the colony ship New Frontier for 8 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The massive ship was shaking like a leaf in a hurricane as it fell through the thick, green atmosphere of Kepler 442c. Every few seconds, alarms would go off as another system failed, or another part of the hull got eaten away by the acidic air outside. Ryan gripped his command chair so hard his knuckles were white. Around him, his crew worked frantically at their stations, trying to keep the ship together long enough to reach the ground. He had 50,000 people on 5 ships depending on him to get this right. There would be no second chances. Hull, damage report, Ryan called out over the noise of grinding metal and screaming alarms. Engineer Amy Chen looked up from her console, sweat dripping down her face. Captain, the outer hull is melting. The acid in this atmosphere is eating through our metal faster than we thought it would. We've lost 30% of our protective plating in the last 10 minutes. Ryan felt his heart sink. The colony ships had been built to travel between stars, not to land on planets. They were like giant metal cities floating in space with gardens and homes and everything people needed to live. But now they were trying to use them as landing vehicles on a world that seemed designed to destroy anything that came near it. How long before we lose hull integrity completely? Ryan asked. Amy checked her readings again. At this rate, maybe 20 minutes. 30, if we're lucky. Through the main window, Ryan could see the surface of Kepler 442c getting closer. It looked like something from a nightmare. The ground was covered with plants that moved without any wind. Some of them were as tall as skyscrapers, with leaves that looked like they were made of metal. Between them, he could see things moving that were definitely not plants. They were too big and too fast to be anything good. "Contact from the other ships, Captain," called out Communications Officer Ben Rodriguez. "Green Haven is reporting critical damage to their main engines. Hope's Dream says they've lost life support on decks 15 through 20. Freedom's call is, Sir, they're not responding." Ryan closed his eyes for a moment. Freedom's call had 12,000 people on board. If they had lost communications, it probably meant they were already gone. "Tell all ships to prepare for emergency landing," Ryan ordered. "Every ship for themselves. Focus on getting your people to the ground alive. Don't worry about anything else." The ship shook again, harder this time. Ryan could hear metal tearing somewhere in the distance. They were coming apart in the air, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. In the passenger sections, families huddled together as their world fell apart around them. Dr. Paul Martinez moved through the corridors, checking on people and trying to keep them calm. But he could see the fear in their eyes. Everyone knew this was probably the end. The gravity on this planet was 3 times stronger than Earth's. Even sitting still, people felt like they had heavy weights on their chests. Children were crying because it hurt to breathe. Older people were having trouble just staying conscious. "Dr. Martinez," called out a woman holding a small child. "My son can't breathe properly. Something's wrong with him." Paul knelt down beside them. The boy was maybe 6 years old, and his lips were turning blue. The heavy gravity was making it hard for his small lungs to work. Paul had seen this same problem all over the ship in the last few hours. "It's the gravity," Paul explained gently. "His body isn't used to being this heavy. Here, try this." He showed the woman how to help her son breathe by supporting his chest. "His body will adapt, but it's going to take time." The woman looked scared. "Will he be okay?" Paul wanted to lie and tell her everything would be fine, but he was a doctor and he had to be honest. "I don't know," he said, "but humans are tougher than we think. We'll figure it out." Up on the bridge, Navigator Ben Rodriguez was studying the surface below them. "Captain, I've found what might be a good landing spot. There's a big valley about 50 kilometers ahead. It looks like it has stable ground and some water sources." "What kind of water?" Ryan asked. "Unknown, sir, but it's liquid, and that's more than we have anywhere else." Ryan made his decision. It wasn't a good decision, but it was the only one they had. "All ships, this is New Frontier Actual. We're going down in Grid Square 77 Alpha, large valley with water sources. Follow us in if you can." The first ship to try landing was Green Haven, the agricultural vessel that carried all their farming equipment and seeds. Ryan watched through his telescope as it hit the ground at twice the safe landing speed. The ship cracked open like an egg, spilling people and equipment across the alien ground. For a moment, Ryan thought everyone on board was dead. Then he saw movement in the wreckage. People were climbing out of the broken ship, moving slowly in the heavy gravity, but moving. They were alive. "My God," whispered Amy Chen. "They made it." Hope's Dream came down next, tumbling end over end as its engines failed completely. It crashed into a grove of the metal trees, which seemed to absorb the impact somehow. The trees bent and twisted around the ship like they were trying to protect it. "That's not normal plant behavior," Ben said, staring at the scene below. "Nothing about this place is normal," Ryan replied. New Frontier was coming in fast now. Too fast. Ryan could see the ground rushing up to meet them. The ship was groaning and creaking as the atmosphere tried to tear it apart. Pieces of hull were flying off behind them like metal snow. "Brace for impact," Ryan announced over the ship's communication system. "All hands, brace for impact." The ship hit the ground with a sound like thunder. Ryan felt himself thrown forward against his harness as the ship bounced, skidded, and finally came to rest in a cloud of dust and alien dirt. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the sound of settling metal and distant alarms. Then Amy Chen spoke up. "Captain, we're down. We're actually down and in one piece." Ryan looked around the bridge. Half his instruments were dead. There were cracks in the main window, and he could smell smoke from somewhere in the ship. But they were alive. "Damage report," he ordered. "Life support is working in about 60% of the ship," Amy reported. "We've got power to essential systems. Main engines are completely destroyed, but we won't be needing them anymore." Through the cracked window, Ryan could see people from Green Haven already moving around outside. They were wearing breathing masks and protective suits, but they were walking around on the surface of a planet that was supposed to kill them instantly. "Sir," Ben said, "I'm picking up signals from New Hope and Destiny's Edge. They made it down, too." Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in hours. Hope. 4 out of 5 ships had made it to the surface. That was better than he had dared to dream. "What about Freedom's call?" he asked. Ben was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "No signal, sir, I'm sorry." Ryan closed his eyes. 12,000 people, but 38,000 had made it to the ground alive. On a planet where nothing was supposed to survive, they had not only survived the landing, but people were already walking around outside. "Sir," Amy said, looking at her readings, "the atmosphere outside is toxic, but it's not immediately deadly. People can survive in it for short periods with basic protection. What about the local life forms?" "Unknown, sir. But so far nothing has tried to attack the people from Green Haven." Ryan stood up slowly, feeling the heavy gravity pull at his bones. "All right, people. We're not in space anymore. We're colonists now, whether we like it or not. Amy, I want you to start figuring out how to make this ship livable long-term. Ben, start mapping the area and locating the other ships. I want to know what resources we have and what threats we're facing." "What about you, sir?" Amy asked. Ryan looked out at the alien landscape that was now their home. "I'm going outside to meet our new neighbors." As he walked toward the airlock, Ryan couldn't help but think about the Galactic Council. They had sent humans to this place to die. They expected the ships to crash and burn, leaving no survivors to bother them ever again. Instead, they had just delivered 50,000 humans to a world that would either kill them or make them stronger than they had ever been before. Ryan had a feeling it was going to be the latter. The airlock opened with a hiss and Captain Ryan Tucker stepped out onto the surface of humanity's new home. 6 months had passed since the ships crashed on Kepler 442c, and Kate Williams stood on top of the metal wall they had built around their settlement. The wall was made from pieces of the crashed ships, welded together into something that looked like it belonged on this strange world. She watched as hunting parties returned from their daily trips, carrying creatures that would have given her nightmares back on Earth. Now she barely looked twice at the 6-legged beasts with razor teeth that the hunters dragged behind them. The creatures were food now, nothing more. Their hides made good clothing, their bones made tools, and their meat kept the colony fed. "Daily report, Kate," said Chief Engineer Danny Foster as he climbed up the ladder to join her on the wall. He was carrying a tablet made from salvaged ship parts, and his clothes were patched with animal hide. Like everyone else in the colony, he looked different now. Thinner in some ways, but stronger too. "What's the good news today?" Kate asked. "The atmospheric processors are working better than we hoped," Danny said, pointing to the large machines they had built near the center of the settlement. "We're creating breathable air pockets around most of the living areas. People don't need masks anymore when they're inside the walls." Kate nodded. It had taken 3 months to figure out how to clean the poisonous air enough for humans to breathe. They had lost 17 people to lung damage before Danny's team cracked the problem. But now children could play outside without worrying about the toxic gases. "How are the food supplies?" Kate asked. "Better than expected. The hydroponics bays from the ships are producing enough vegetables to feed about half our population. The rest comes from hunting and what the kids have been calling wild farming." Kate smiled at that. The children had figured out that some of the local plants were not only safe to eat but actually good for humans. Plants that should have been poisonous turned out to make people stronger and healthier. It was like the planet was trying to help them, even though it had been designed to kill them. "What about the storm coming in?" Kate asked, looking at the green clouds building on the horizon. "Storm shelters are ready. Danny said. Plus, we've learned that the acid rain actually helps with our metal refining process. What kills most alien species makes our tools better. Kate shook her head in amazement. When they first landed, the acid rain had been one of their biggest fears. The first time it rained, people had hidden in the ships and prayed the hull would hold. Now they had learned to collect the rain and use it to make their metal stronger and more resistant to damage. Below them in the settlement, Kate could see the daily life of the colony. People were working in gardens, children were playing games that would have been impossible in normal gravity, and workshops were busy making tools and weapons from materials that shouldn't exist. Dr. Paul Martinez was walking between the buildings, checking on patients. He looked up and waved at Kate. 6 months ago, he had been afraid that the heavy gravity would kill half the colonists. Instead, he had been documenting changes in human bodies that amazed him. Paul wants to talk to you later, Danny said. He has some new findings about what this place is doing to us. Good changes or bad changes? Kate asked. According to him, very good changes. Almost too good to believe. That evening, Kate met with Dr. Martinez in what used to be the ship's medical bay. It had been expanded and modified so many times that it barely looked like part of a spaceship anymore. Paul was excited about something, which was unusual for him. He was normally the most careful and serious person in the colony. Kate, you need to see this, Paul said, pulling up charts on his makeshift computer. I've been tracking the physical changes in our people for 6 months now. The results are incredible. Show me, Kate said, sitting down in a chair made from woven plant fibers. First, bone density, Paul said, pointing to a chart. Everyone's bones have gotten stronger, much stronger. The heavy gravity forced our bodies to adapt, and now even our smallest children have bones like athletes. That's good, right? Very good. But that's just the beginning. Lung capacity has increased by an average of 40%. Heart muscle is stronger. Reflexes are faster. Even our eyesight has improved to handle the different light from this sun. Kate looked at the numbers. On the screen, they seemed impossible. Are you sure about this? I've checked and double-checked. Our people aren't just surviving this world, Kate. They're becoming better because of it. Paul switched to another screen. But the most amazing changes are in the children. Kids who were born here, or who were very young when we arrived, are adapting, faster than anyone else. Like Emma Parker and Carlos Rivera? Exactly. Emma can outrun creatures that used to terrify the adults. Carlos can sense when predators are coming from over a kilometer away. And they're not the only ones. Kate had noticed this herself. The children seemed to belong on this world in a way that even the adults didn't. They moved through the dangerous landscape like they had been born for it. There's something else, Paul said, his voice getting quieter. The changes aren't just physical. People are thinking differently too. Problem-solving skills have improved. Memory is better. It's like this world is making us smarter as well as stronger. Kate felt a chill run down her spine. What are you saying, Paul? I'm saying we're not the same species that left Earth, Paul said. This world is changing us into something new, something better adapted for survival in hostile environments. Before Kate could respond, there was a commotion outside. They could hear people shouting and running. Kate and Paul rushed outside to see what was happening. Danny Foster was standing in the center of the settlement, pointing up at the sky. Everyone look up there, he was shouting. We've got visitors. Kate looked up and saw lights moving across the dark sky. They were clearly artificial, moving in patterns that no natural object could make. After 6 months alone on this world, they finally had company. Are those ships? Someone called out. Definitely ships, Danny replied. And they're heading this way. The entire colony gathered in the main square to watch the lights get closer. Kate could see faces around her that showed excitement, fear, and curiosity. These were probably the first alien ships to visit Kepler 442c since they had been dropped here. Do you think it's the Galactic Council? Asked Amy Chen. Could be, Kate said. They probably want to check on our graves. The lights got brighter as the ships entered the atmosphere. Kate could see now that there were 3 of them, sleek and advanced looking. much more advanced than the colony ships had been. Should we hide? Someone asked. Kate looked around at her people. 6 months ago, they would have hidden. 6 months ago, they were refugees who had been thrown away by a galaxy that didn't want them. But now they were something different. They were colonists who had turned a death sentence into a new beginning. No, Kate said firmly. We don't hide anymore. This is our world now. If they want to visit, they can come down and introduce themselves properly. The alien ships circled the settlement several times before finally landing in the cleared area, outside the walls. Kate could see figures in environmental suits climbing out of the ships. They moved carefully like they were afraid the ground might eat them. Danny, get a security team together, Kate ordered. Paul, bring your medical scanner in case they need help with the atmosphere. Everyone else, stay calm and let them come to us. As the aliens approached the settlement gates, Kate couldn't help but smile. The Galactic Council had sent them here to die. Instead, they had created something the galaxy had never seen before. They had created humans who were stronger, smarter, and better adapted for survival than any species in known space. The aliens were about to get their first look at what they had accidentally created. Kate had a feeling they weren't going to like what they found. High Counselor Zethkar stared at the data screen in his private chamber, his yellow eyes growing wider with each line he read. The numbers made no sense. According to the automated monitoring stations orbiting Kepler 442c, not only were humans still alive on the Deathworld, but their population was growing. This cannot be correct, he hissed, his forked tongue flicking nervously. Run the analysis again. His aide, a smaller reptilian named Sector, worked frantically at the control panel. Sir, I have run it 17 times. The results are the same. The human settlement now covers over 12 square kilometers. They show signs of agriculture, mining, manufacturing, and construction. Zethkar felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. No species survived on Kepler 442c. The planet was classified as unsurvivable for a reason. The atmosphere was poison, the gravity was crushing, the wildlife was deadly, and the environment itself fought against any form of life. Show me the visual data, Zethkar ordered. The screen changed to show footage from the spy drones that had been secretly watching the planet. Zethkar expected to see a few desperate humans hiding in sealed bunkers, maybe fighting over scraps of food. Instead, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Humans were walking around in the open air, wearing only simple breathing masks. Children were playing in what looked like parks. Adults were working in fields growing food. In the distance, he could see construction projects and what appeared to be factories producing smoke. How long has it been since we sent them there? Zethkar asked. 8 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days, sir. Zethkar watched a human child run past one of the planet's notorious acid-spewing plants without even slowing down. The plant, which should have dissolved the child in seconds, seemed to ignore her completely. Contact Counselor Vexnari immediately, Zethkar ordered. Tell her we have an emergency situation. Within an hour, the inner council was assembled in the secure meeting chamber. Representatives from the most powerful species in the galaxy watched the same footage that had terrified Zethkar. The room was silent except for the sound of various alien breathing apparatus and the occasional gasp of shock. Counselor Vexnari, her crystal body flickering with agitation, spoke first. This is impossible. Our scientists assured us that nothing could survive on that world for more than 72 hours. Perhaps the humans found some way to seal themselves inside their crashed ships, suggested Counselor Mordak, a floating jellyfish-like creature. Look at the footage again, Zethkar said, replaying the section showing humans working outside. They are not hiding in their ships. They are living on the surface as if it were a garden world. Counselor Heshvan, a being made of what looked like living metal, made a sound like grinding gears. Send a reconnaissance team. We need to know what is happening down there. I have already prepared one, Zethkar said. Our best soldiers from 3 different species. They will investigate and report back. The reconnaissance team that descended to Kepler 442c consisted of 12 elite warriors. Squad leader Kolth was a Zephyrian. 8 feet tall and covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. Beside him stood Rixal, a Christine soldier whose body could shift between solid and energy forms. The third species was represented by Nexus, a biomechanical hybrid that could adapt to almost any environment. They landed their ship in a cleared area about 2 kilometers from the human settlement. Each soldier wore the most advanced environmental suit their species could build, with enough life support to last a week in the toxic atmosphere. Readings confirmed the atmospheric composition, Colt reported into his communicator. Poison levels are exactly as expected. How are the humans surviving this? Unknown, came the reply from their ship. Proceed with caution. The team had not walked more than 50 meters when they heard a voice behind them. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Welcome to New Kepler. The soldiers spun around, weapons raised, to see a human male walking toward them. He was wearing simple clothing and what appeared to be a basic breathing mask. No environmental suit, no heavy protective gear, nothing that should have kept him alive in this poison atmosphere. Commander Steve Bailey stopped about 10 meters away and raised his hands to show he was not armed. At least not armed with anything the aliens could see. What they could not see were the 20 other humans positioned around them, armed with weapons made from the planet's most dangerous materials. I am Squad Leader Kolth of the Galactic Council, Reconnaissance Division, the armored alien announced. You are in violation of your exile terms by still being alive. Steve laughed, and the sound made the aliens nervous. It was not the laugh of someone who was afraid or desperate. It was the laugh of someone who was enjoying himself. Exile terms? Steve said. I think those went out the window when you sent us to a planet that was supposed to kill us all. Since we're obviously not dead, we figured the deal was off. Rixal, the crystal being, shifted into a more aggressive form. How are you surviving in this environment? Our sensors show toxin levels that should kill any carbon-based life form in minutes. Turns out your sensors don't know everything about carbon-based life forms, Steve replied. Especially human ones. Kolth took a step forward, his weapon still raised. Explain. We adapted, Steve said simply. Amazing what the human body can do when it has to. Amazing what the human mind can figure out when survival depends on it. As if to prove his point, a group of human children ran past in the distance, playing some kind of game that involved jumping over acid pools and climbing the metal trees. They moved like dancers, perfectly comfortable in an environment that was making the alien soldiers' equipment work overtime just to keep them alive. Impossible, Nexus said, his mechanical parts whirring with stress. Biological adaptation does not work that quickly. Apparently it does, Steve said. Would you like a tour of our settlement? See what we've built? Kolth was about to refuse when he noticed something that made him freeze. There were humans emerging from concealment, all around them. They seemed to appear from nowhere, from underground tunnels, from behind trees that looked solid, even from overhead where they had somehow been clinging to the rocky cliffs. Each human was armed with weapons that looked like they had been carved from the planet itself. Spears tipped with crystallized acid, bows made from the bones of local predators, and what appeared to be throwing weapons shaped from the metal trees. How many of you are there? Rixal asked, his voice shaking despite his efforts to stay calm. In the immediate area? About 50, Steve said casually. In the settlement? Just over 38,000. We lost some people in the crashes, but birth rates have been up since we landed. Turns out this place is good for human health. Kolth's training told him to fight, but his survival instincts told him he was surrounded and outmatched. These humans moved like they owned this deadly world, while his team could barely function in their heavy protective suits. What do you want? Kolth asked. Want? Steve seemed genuinely confused by the question. We don't want anything from you. You're visitors on our world. The question is, what do you want? Your exile was permanent, Kolth said, trying to sound authoritative. You are not permitted to return to galactic space. Steve's smile got wider, and somehow that made it more frightening. Who said anything about returning? We like it here. This is our home now. Then why should the Council care what happens? To you? Because, Steve said, gesturing toward the settlement in the distance. "We've learned a lot in the past 8 months. About survival, about adaptation, about what happens when you take people who are already hard to kill and put them in a place that tries to kill them every day." In the distance, the aliens could see smoke rising from what looked like industrial facilities. Construction equipment was moving around, but it was not like anything in their databases. It looked like it had been grown rather than built. "We've gotten very good at making things," Steve continued. "Tools, weapons, vehicles, even spacecraft. All from materials that exist naturally on this world. Materials that most species can't even touch without dying." Kolth felt a chill run through his armored body. "You're building ships?" "Oh yes," Steve said. "We're very grateful to the Council for sending us here. This world has taught us so much. We thought it would be rude not to share what we've learned." Alien soldiers looked at each other through their helmet displays. They had come here expecting to find the last desperate survivors of a failed species. Instead, they had found something that made them all want to run back to their ship and never return. "I think you should take a message back to the Council," Steve said, his voice still friendly but somehow full of threat. "Tell them that the humans of Kepler 442c send their thanks. Tell them we're doing very well, and tell them that we look forward to showing the rest of the galaxy what we've learned about survival." As the alien soldiers backed slowly toward their ship, Steve called out one last thing. "Oh, and gentlemen, next time you visit, bring more friends. We'd love to show them around too." The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from dozens of species filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a noise like a storm of different languages and sounds. But when the lights dimmed and the central display activated, the room fell completely silent. On the screen, footage from Kepler 442c played in stunning detail. Humans were not just alive on the Deathworld, they were building cities. Children played in gardens, where the plants should have killed them. Adults worked in factories that processed materials no other species could even touch. Most terrifying of all, massive construction yards showed the skeletal frames of spacecraft being built. High Counselor Zethkar stood before the assembly, his normally commanding presence diminished by fear. "The reconnaissance team has returned, with disturbing news," he announced. "The human exile has not proceeded as expected." Ambassador Jake Morrison appeared on the main communication screen, broadcasting from the surface of Kepler 442c. Behind him, the aliens could see the sprawling, human settlement that now covered most of the valley where the ships had crashed. Jake looked different than he had 10 months ago. Stronger, more confident, like someone who had faced death and won. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "The human colony of New Kepler formally requests reinstatement to the Galactic Council with full member privileges." The chamber erupted in shocked voices and angry sounds. Several smaller species immediately began protesting, while others demanded to know how the humans were still alive. Zethkar slammed his staff on the floor, creating a sound like thunder. "You were exiled permanently," he declared. "The terms were clear." "The terms assumed we would die," Jake replied calmly. "Since we are obviously very much alive and thriving, we consider the original agreement to be invalid. We are prepared to negotiate new terms." Counselor Vexnari floated forward, her crystal body pulsing with angry red light. "What makes you think you have any right to negotiate? You are criminals who were sent away to pay for your crimes." Jake's smile was not pleasant. "What makes us think we have the right? Well, let me show you." The display changed to show footage of human construction projects. Massive buildings grew from the ground like living things, but they were clearly manufactured. Vehicles moved through the settlement that looked like nothing in any galactic database. Most shocking of all, humans were seen working alongside creatures that should have been deadly predators, as if they had somehow tamed the planet's most dangerous life forms. "In 10 months, we have built a civilization on a world that your best scientists said could not support any form of life," Jake continued. "We have turned your death sentence into our greatest achievement." Dr. Laura Kim appeared beside Jake on the screen. She was standing in what looked like a medical facility, but the equipment around her seemed to be grown rather than built. "Our population has increased by 15% since landing," she reported. "Birth rates are up, death rates are down, and we have documented significant positive evolutionary changes in our people." "Impossible," gasped Counselor Mordak. "Evolution does not work that quickly." "Human evolution does," Dr. Kim replied. "When survival depends on it, we adapt faster than any species you have encountered. Our children born on this world are already showing abilities that surpass baseline human norms." The screen split to show Captain Ryan Tucker standing beside what was clearly a spacecraft under construction. But it was unlike any ship the Council had ever seen. It seemed to be made from materials that shifted and moved like living tissue, but with the clear structure of advanced technology. "We have learned to work with materials that exist nowhere else in the galaxy," Captain Tucker explained. "Materials that are toxic to most species but beneficial to humans. We are currently constructing a fleet of exploration vessels to share our discoveries with other worlds." The implied threat was clear. The humans were not just surviving, they were preparing to spread. Counselor Heshevon made a sound like grinding metal. "What do you want from us?" "Recognition," Jake answered immediately. "Full membership in the Galactic Council, trading rights with all member species, and a formal apology for attempting to commit genocide against our people." "And if we refuse?" Zethkar demanded. The display changed once more, this time showing a massive structure that dominated the horizon behind the human settlement. It was clearly a launch facility, and sitting on it was a ship that made the alien representatives shift nervously in their seats. The ship was sleek and predatory-looking, built from materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Then we will have to come explain our position in person," Captain Tucker said, his hand resting casually on the hull of the alien ship. "We have learned so much about survival, adaptation, and problem-solving. We would love to share that knowledge with the rest of the galaxy." The chamber was completely silent now. Every representative understood what they were looking at. The humans had not just survived their exile, they had been transformed by it. They had become something harder, stronger, and more dangerous than anything the galaxy had seen before. Counselor Vexnari's voice was smaller when she spoke. "How many ships do you have?" "Currently, 12 completed vessels with 24 more under construction," Captain Tucker replied. "But we are not planning an invasion, if that is what concerns you. We are planning exploration missions. There are so many worlds in the galaxy that other species consider too dangerous to visit. We thought we might take a look at them." The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. The humans were not just planning to return to galactic space, they were planning to claim the worlds that no one else could live on. Every Deathworld, every toxic planet, every hostile environment in the galaxy could potentially become a human colony. Ambassador Jake stepped forward on the screen. "We bear no ill will toward the Council," he said. "You thought you were solving a problem by getting rid of us. Instead, you gave us the greatest gift possible. You showed us what we could become when we stopped trying to fit in with everyone else. We taught ourselves that there is no such thing as an impossible environment," Dr. Kim added. "Only environments that we have not learned to master yet. So here is our proposal," Jake continued. "Recognize New Kepler as a sovereign human world. Grant us full trading rights and diplomatic status. Help us establish peaceful contact with the other member species. In return, we will share our knowledge of survival technology and environmental adaptation." "And if we refuse?" Zethkar asked again, though his voice had lost all its authority. Jake's expression grew serious. "Then we will assume that the Galactic Council considers humanity to be a threat that must be eliminated, and we will respond accordingly." The chamber erupted in panicked discussion. Representatives huddled together, speaking in urgent whispers. The smaller species looked terrified, while the larger military powers seemed to be calculating their chances in a fight against humans who had been forged in the fires of a death world. Finally, Zethkar called for order. The vote that followed was not even close. Every single species voted to grant humanity full membership rights, expanded territories, and preferred trading status. The motion passed unanimously. As the session ended, Jake Morrison smiled from the screen. "Thank you for your wisdom, honored counselors. We look forward to a long and productive relationship with all member species." The connection ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Counselor Vexnari turned to Zethkar, her crystal body flickering with confused colors. "What have we done?" Zethkar stared at the empty screen where the humans had been. "We sent them to a Deathworld to die," he said quietly. "Yes. Instead, we taught them that there are no Deathworlds, only worlds that other species are too weak to live on. In the depths of space around Kepler 442c, automated construction facilities worked around the clock. Ships designed with technology that merged alien engineering with materials found nowhere else in the galaxy took shape in the darkness. Each ship was crewed by humans who had been changed by their exile, made stronger and more adaptable than any species the galaxy had known. The Galactic Council had tried to eliminate humanity by sending them to a place where nothing could survive. Instead, they had created something that would reshape the galaxy forever. They had created a species for whom no environment was too hostile, no challenge too great, and no world too dangerous to call home. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen.